Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, partnering with donors from all walks of life to improve southeastern Virginia through grants, scholarships, and leadership initiatives. Learn more at hamptonroadscf.org.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Hamley. This week, President Trump shocked the world with his promise that, quote, a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again, unquote, if Iran did not comply with his demands, including reopening the Strait of Hormuz. At the last minute, a fragile ceasefire was achieved, but Israel has not stopped the bombings in Lebanon, and there's no real sign that the Strait of Hormuz has reopened. The president's threat is on hold for now, but words matter, and we'll talk about why when Another View returns, right after this national, regional, and local news from NPR and WHRO News.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Hamley. Pardon my raspiness today, but the allergies I know is affecting a whole lot of you out there, and they're killing me today, but we're going to get through anyway. So it was Easter Sunday afternoon. My husband and I had just finished dinner when I received a message from some friends with a screenshot of the president's threat to Iran. I read it and my stomach churned and my mouth dropped to the floor. The tone was disturbing, the profanity obnoxious, the message demeaning to Iranian civilians. And then 2 days later, President Trump said on Truth Social, quote, a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. Whatever happened to civility, even in war? Let's ask our Another View Roundtable. Dr. Alvian Lyons is a nationally recognized speaker, relationship expert, author, and leadership consultant. She's the CEO of Alvian Lyons Incorporated, and we have missed you.
I have
Welcome
missed
back.
you guys too. And what a great conversation to come back to, you know?
Dawn Hester is an educator, political activist, and treasurer for the city of Norfolk. Hey, Dawn.
Hey, everybody.
And Allison Moore is a clean comedian, human resources expert, and youth program director. She directs a program for youth called More Laughing Arts and Media. Hi.
Hey, and our kids are listening. They're on spring break, and they are listening. They get extra points.
Oh,
So,
fantastic.
hey,
So did they have to do a report?
Yeah, we're going to talk about what Miss Allison talked about on the radio show with you.
That's fantastic. Yeah, it's a great camp, and the kids are wonderful. So congratulations to you.
Thank you so much.
All right, before we get deep into this conversation, I want to hear you all's reactions to the strong rhetoric. Either one, the Easter Sunday one, the one 2 days later, all of it. What was your reaction, Dawn?
I was disgusted. I was hurt. And I prayed. I guess that was the bottom line. It was horrible.
What about you, Allison?
I think I am today playing the character of, I'm of the people that's like, oh, he's a troll, and kept it moving. It was very much like, he crazy. We still back on the 8 video with the Obama, like that man is a troll, and what is he blocking now? They was about to release another video from the Epstein files or something, and so he was like, let me distract. That was your
reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Alvin.
I always measure it against the context with which we're sitting inside of. And so, you know, we are coming out of Easter, and for those of us who are people of faith and vote as a basis of our faith, I thought immediately how we measure his commentary against the fruits of the Spirit, you know, that if we really consider ourselves Christians or believers and we recognize the importance of representing our value system in the decisions that we make and how we live our lives, how does supporting someone who communicates, because it says out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, right? So something that comes out of your mouth couldn't first could not be in your heart, right? So anyone who reads their Bible knows that. So, and I bring this up only because it was Easter, right? So contextual. So how do we sit with knowing that the fruits of the Spirit are love and joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, and simultaneously invest our vote in a way that directly contradicts the fundamental principles of who we say we believe in? How do we square those two things effectively? And to understand that if you are faithful over a few things, you are ruler over many, that what we do in the small things is representative of what we are worthy to be responsible for, that they don't exist independent of each other relative to those of us who live our faith. How do people sit well with that and make it okay? And so for me, I found myself deeper in the questions that I think that true believers should, could, or may be asking themselves as they square their decisions with what we see as the fruit of His Spirit.
Well, excuse me, I have a specific question I want to ask you about, because we know that President Trump has made offensive comments throughout both of his presidencies, but from grabbing women by the P word to Robert Mueller just died, good, I'm glad he did. But the comments this week, they just seem to be on a whole different level. So from a human behavior perspective, Madam Doctor, what's your assessment? I mean, is there something else happening here, or is this just more of him because it's more of him?
So I don't think that anything that he has said is inconsistent with what he's always been saying. I think the issue is that we like to pretend that we can look at one tree in the forest without looking at the entire forest. And the reality is that the man has already said who he is long ago. And it is only for those of us who need to not know the truth that we choose to look at singular trees rather than the entire forest. And that is very common, to be honest with you, independent of our president, but in abusive relationships. It's the ability to isolate a singular moment, particularly a singular positive moment, and to use that as salve to all of the abusive actions so that we can repeat these cycles of abuse. And the reality is that in many relationships, whether they are intimate or whether they are distant, we can still replicate behaviors and patterns that indicate the toxicity of the partnership. So when we are pretending as if these things are isolated, when in fact they are just bigger and smaller cups that are drawn from the same well, I don't know if we're being honest with ourselves as individuals, as humans, as Americans, when we are choosing the myopic view rather than the collective one.
Alice.
Well, I'm so glad my therapist is back. Thank you for being here. I missed the months that we haven't been congruent.
Yes, we did.
Because I feel like you're giving me all of the right words to say. I'm so triggered when people are like, can you believe what he said this time? I'm like, this time? This time? What? Y'all caught up with the other times? So you have given me, I'm recording this and I'm going to repeat this. I'm going to play this for the people. I don't understand how people seem to be so independently shocked. I'm like, he's a troll. This is what any chance he's like, ooh, here's some oxygen. Let me go and show myself again. And I think it's very frustrating that people are acting surprised. That part is where I'm just...
But have you ever had a friend who was in a clearly unhealthy relationship and you sitting...
I was the friend.
And you sitting on the outside of it as someone who loves them, and you're watching each of these things happening, and you're wondering how the friend continues to stay in this relationship when I love you enough to want better for you. That's what the American people the believers amongst us, are feeling watching people stay in relationship with an unhealthy partner. This is not healthy for us. And it's not healthy for America as if that's some independent thing, that these are just numbers. For those of us who genuinely love humans, we are thinking about how unhealthy it is for the individual. That if you get used to these patterns of connectivity, it will not stop just in terms of your relationship politically. When you become desensitized to toxicity, that will be present in your intimate life very soon. And that's how we see families be ripped apart behind political differences, because what happened out there doesn't stay out there. It will show up at your dining table. It'll show up at Thanksgiving. It'll show up in your marital bed. If we get used to this stuff, we are going to start to change how we treat each other on a daily basis. And that's what I'm more worried about.
757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. I would love to hear from you, whichever side that you are on, in terms of what you think about the lack of civility that seems to be enveloping us today. 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Don, why does civility matter?
It matters because that's how we should live. It's how we should, present ourselves and be within ourselves. We have to, first you got to love yourself to be civil to somebody else. And what you demonstrate as an individual is imparted to whoever you're talking with, sharing with, living with. So that internal life, you can't, I hope that we don't, as individuals, let it go with all of the angst that is out in the community, in the country, in the world. Because when we do that, then we keep having to live in the chaos that we're living in right now. And it's presented in my office all the time. When people come down or come to pay their taxes or call us for information and they are, upset. Okay, I'm okay with you being upset, but I'm not okay with how you respond to the person who's trying to give you the answer or the information that you need. Because if you disrespect them, my guidance to my team is, hang up on them. Because you don't need to internalize and if they're asking you for something or want something, they should be civil enough to know that the person that they're talking to is the one who can give them the answer. But if you disrespect them, you don't need to get anything from them. And that's how I have my team work. But even as an individual, when I'm out in the public, as a political person, and people have different views, and I can tell that, then I just listen. Don't respond. I don't nod my head because I don't want them to think I agree. And just let them say what they want to say. We must learn how to become civil again. But I'm saying that because COVID changed us too.
It did.
COVID changed us too because we became internal because we were staying away from people and trying to stay healthy and keeping our families safe. So that was a change. Also during his administration the first time around. And so we as individuals, the civility piece, I just say look at yourself first and then try to figure out how you're going to deal with all of the angst that's coming our way.
Let's talk to David in Virginia Beach. Hi, David. You're on the air.
Hey, thank you for taking my call. I'm also a Spirit-filled Christian. Want to operate in the fruits of the Spirit all the time, every day, all day long. I'm 71-year-old white guy. But my question would be, if you were in the position of president and you were about to unleash bombs on a country whose leadership has held the people against their will mostly for 75 years, what words would you have used that would have been potentially emotionally enough to get their attention? What words would you guys use if in 1 hour or in 1 week you were about to destroy the systems within that country that would have hurt the population terribly if he had done that? What words? You're psychologists, doctors. What statement would you have made that might have gotten their attention?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
David, thanks so much for the call. Alvin, you want to take that first?
So I appreciate your thoughtfulness, David, in the question that you are asking. I think the challenge I have in responding appropriately to your question is that the fundamental premise of considering dropping bombs that would have killed an entire civilization is I would have already been working from a different nexus, right? So the reason I would not have words for it is because it would never have crossed my mind as a Christian to consider killing an entire group of people. I would hope that the God that we serve, who died for all of us based on our fundamental common beliefs as Christians, would have seen the value in the innocent, such that he would have expected us, if given the privilege to lead, to make a calculus that could allow for the most difficult things being done without destroying all of the innocent. So the place I would have started from would have fundamentally meant that I would not have needed to find the right words to say to a situation like that, because that option would have never been in my calculus as a Bible-believing Christian.
The young people say clock it.
Say it again?
The young people say clock it right there.
Okay, which means?
She's clocked it. She made a point.
So war is supposed to be between the military, correct? Don?
Why you say war is supposed to be between the military? War is between the countries who are guided by the leadership of the military.
But of the, in terms of the rules of war and so forth, it is not to go in and kill the innocent civilians.
So
the fighting is supposed to be between the militaries. Am I incorrect in that?
No, you're not incorrect in that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's when you're working from rules of engagement.
Right.
Okay? This administration is not working, in my opinion, from rules of engagement that we have had for my 70 years. Okay? So when you change the rules, that means there are no rules. Mm. And whoever is operating from their perspective is setting up new rules, which is what we're seeing now, not only in our country, but in the world itself. So when there are no rules, you have to make your rules. But I did want to say, as an elected person, if I was the president, because I think that's the way he shaped the question, I would never tell the enemy what I was about to do. Okay?
Clock it.
Right. So that's one thing. But the other is, there has been no conversation with Americans, because that's who I'm primarily concerned about why we did it in the first place. Yes, that Iran has been the way it has been longer than my life. Agreements have been tried to be worked out. Some have worked, some have not. The person who is currently our president pulled us out of the agreement that we had. So he changed, our president, changed the rules of engagement. So I understand the question. but he should not have said publicly what he was going to do as the leader of our country. That's between the military and them. And it should have been between our Congress and our Senate, congressional. But that did not occur either. So even if you believe, in my opinion, that he did the right thing, as it appears the caller believes, it does not sit well with me as a listener and a watcher of what's happening in the world, that my country thinks it's okay to wipe out a civilization.
Well, and
when it's been tried before and didn't work.
And isn't that the dichotomy, though? Because people, when they see our president make statements, then it becomes America thinks this way.
Correct. And that's the thing. That's what, when you talk about civility, one of the things that when we were all younger, the presidency was a place that we aspired to. And we held our leaders, imperfect as every single one of them were. So let's be clear, there were no Jesuses in office. Okay, so we're fully accepting the humanity of the leaders. All right. But there was an understanding of the responsibility of the mantle that the individual was carrying. So there was an elegance with which our modern day presidents operated with. I understand Abe Lincoln. I understand that there were, in times ago, there was not
physical fighting,
right? There was all kinds of
that,
stuff.
yeah.
Parliament, I understand, right? So I'm not pretending that those things didn't exist, but there was also the Vikings. Okay, so we do not behave as we once behaved. All right, so that's what evolution is for. But the understanding that the office required a certain level of elegance in the way in which you communicated and conducted yourself. It used to be the thing that our parents talked to our children and said, one day, do you see how, right? It was pointing to a standard of excellence for the way that we as Americans conduct ourselves as the leader of the world, right? So for many of us who believed in those things that our parents taught us, for those of us who loved, the inspiration of a President Reagan, the eloquence and elegance of a President Obama, the character of a John McCain, whatever that may be, the integrity of a Colin Powell, whatever your perspective may have been, there was a standard with which each of those individuals conducted themselves with, that whether you shared politics or not, this expectation of how we treated each other as humans was not lost prior to this show we are all part of. We are all part of a reality television show that many of us did not sign up for.
Let's talk to Teva in Smithfield. Hi, Teva, you're on the air.
Hi, it's Tiva, but it's...
Oh, Tiva, I'm so sorry.
No worries, I've called worse. I appreciate the show, and I enjoy the intellect. I have a couple points I'd like to point out. I'm an educated country boy. I love farming and all that stuff. But my grandfather taught me an idiom that I have not forgotten. You cannot get a gallon of water out of a pint jar. Right. It's impossible. The things that our president is currently doing is not an idiom of the office. He does not have the intellectual capacity for the office. It's beyond him. And we keep ignoring that as a factor. No one asked for these decisions that he's making. No one asked for Americans to be killed on the street in Minneapolis. No one asked for their homes to be invaded without a warrant. These things are contrary to our Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And we keep ignoring these things and say it doesn't matter. It does matter. And if we keep allowing arrogance to be the forefront and ignorance to be the spotlight, we won't have a civilization.
Thank you, Tiva, for calling.
Because we want to call you by your
correct name. Absolutely.
That is right.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Dawn.
Well, and then that's why I think as a citizen of America, it is my responsibility to make sure that we have a civilization that we all want to live in. So, goes back to first time for me. I'm ready to die for the country if I have to.
Mm-hmm.
Because it may come to that, folks, as we're listening and seeing what's happening just in America. Yeah. We have to be prepared to defend it, to keep it, if we want to have it.
Hang on one second, Allison. If you're just joining us, we're talking about civility in today's society with our Another View Roundtable. Relationship expert Dr. Alvian Lyons, Norfolk City Treasurer Dawn Hester, and clean comedian, human resources expert, and youth program director Allison Moore. 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Allison, you wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, that I texted the doctor, ma'am. So look, one thing I do appreciate about this conversation that I learned from you all so much, you helped me with, is just intellectual disagreement.
Mm-hmm.
Because even conversations from the brother that says he calls in and he listens to the show, so shout out to him, and he had a difference of a perspective and question. Those kind of things make me shut down. Like I immediately, oh, you playing. And then I don't have words left, right? Like, but watching you all just in your maturity and professionalism work through it, like, is very helpful for me as someone who is a leader and constantly growing, because I don't always understand how to compute something that seems so simple. Like, sir, you are very well aware that there was 75 other things. That's how I'm thinking, right? Like, how do we even get here? Before you call and talk about, well, what other words do you think we should have? We should have something in that quiet room, that safe room, that would have prevented us from getting here. So I appreciate this conversation, like Tiva said, from the intellect that you all always share, because it helps me to,
But isn't that part of what civility then becomes? The ability for us to be able to listen to one another despite our differences.
Yeah, because I'd love to talk with him some more.
Me too.
Because I'd love to understand why he feels that way. Because just like people want to understand why we feel the way we feel, I'd like to understand why people who don't feel this way feel the way that they do.
But that's a part of why I was excited about this conversation in civility, because my immediate knee jerk was I don't want to have a conversation with somebody that appears to be an instigator or a troll. That's something that I'm working and growing through, because it hasn't always served me to say, oh, it's nothing that gives me safe in this environment, so I'm out. But I also had questions. Like, I talk a lot about our show with one of your fans, Jane. She has been a part of our program because of this show, and then she came and I learned with her, and I'm like, what is my responsibility to civility, right? Like, who am I to try to fix it? Y'all already nuts and been nuts, and you want to be nuts for 71 years, which is not true, right? That's not the truth, but that's like how my emotions get into it and interferes with me being someone who can do what y'all do.
And I think it's important to know the difference between IQ, as an intellectual quotient, versus EQ, which is really your emotional quotient or emotional intelligence. We treat them as if they're synonymous, and they're quite different. And our ability you can help raise your EQ by examining, pausing when you have a reaction, to be able to pause and sit with, before you say anything, why am I feeling this thing that I'm feeling, right? That thing that wants to raise up and say, this is nonsense, this is foolishness, I want to walk away from this table, you're an idiot, I don't agree, whatever that may be, based on whatever the triggering in the conversation is, being able to recognize that I'm feeling something and I want to react a certain way, but instead I need to inquire first of myself. And then if I actually want to see this relationship, this conversation go any further, then to be able to ask an honest question about it. Because the reality is that for as long as all of us shut down when faced with something different than our personal beliefs, we will be unable to do relationship. And when relationship breaks down, we are unable to do community. And when community breaks down, we are in trouble.
You know, it's so interesting that you bring that up, because one of the frustrations that Lisa and I, in the 15 years that we've had on this show, in terms of trying to find people with some opposing political beliefs to sit down at the table with us. And the response I get from people I know in the community who are very eloquent in their discussions about their beliefs, and who are on social media sharing how they feel and so forth. And they say, I don't want to be the lone guinea pig on this table. But you know what? If we don't have those kinds of conversations, if we don't hear other perspectives, then we're missing out on growth, on our own growth. But I want to bring up a theory that I was taught, that I read as I was looking over our show today. You know, I have to do my research. And they were saying that the whole idea also of bucking against civility or disrupting civility is an opportunity for the oppressed to have a voice and to move forward. And they used as an example in civil rights, during the civil rights movement, when Dr. King was, and it was impolite at that time in society for blacks to sit at the counter, because that's not what society's, politeness was all about. So this was a disruption of an oppressed people to move society forward. But Dr. King, in his way, would say things like, we need to call black men men. They're not boys. We need to call black women, if they are married, Mrs., because they're not girls. So he was utilizing what was already in society to make it a part of, for all of us, as opposed to just some people within society. And I'm just curious as to how you all think about, is this a way to disrupt what we're seeing now? Is they're saying this now is helping the oppressed, meaning the MAGA folks for the most part, who feel oppressed, to be able to become more a part of society. Do you think that? What do you think? I found it really fascinating.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dawn.
The teacher pointed my way. I was ready for her wisdom. Because my thought, I had to go back to, you need to
think about
before it comes out your mouth.
Yeah. The way my arms start sweating.
So I don't think that what is occurring today is for the individuals who believed and voted for our current president. I do believe that they felt that they were and are being ignored, or their needs are being ignored. But then you had so many others of us who still feel black, like me, our needs are being ignored. So does that mean you have an oppressed country? And is it oppressed based on income? Because what I see now is that those who have, they fine. And those of us who are still trying to get there, we still got a little oppression thought in us, because it's like, how come we just can't get up this next step of the ladder? So I think that the individuals who believed in this current president thought that he was going to do something for them. But if you paid attention to him in his first term, everything is about him. So there was, in my opinion, never any intention to do anything about anything except increase his wealth and cause the country, the individuals, the citizens of all realms to go back in that shell and be quiet and let them take over like we see and have seen in Russia and other countries of that nature. And that is what I see others in the president's realm trying to do with our country.
And that was part of what they were talking about in this theory, is that the whole idea then civility then becomes, as you just said, quiet, docile, don't say anything.
Yep. You can't be scared, excuse me.
And see, you said the word that I'm constantly thinking about. My goal always is to try to be as compassionate as I possibly can, even to those who have no compassion for my own humanity. Partly because I understand that you heal nothing by breaking everything. All right. So I'm not interested in trying to make my point at the expense of healing being the outcome. So, which means that I have to evaluate what could possibly be true where I am concerned or where someone else is concerned that is shaping or motivating their behaviors in a way that I can ascribe something that is not necessarily evil, nefarious, angry, that I can pull away the darkest of emotions and attributes, that I can remove that from my equal sign, right? I can remove that out of my calculus. So let me be clear. The difference between how we would approach something. If I think you are trying to hurt me because you are angry and vicious, my response is going to be very different than if you're trying to hurt me because you yourself are afraid. Two different responses, right? So if you have a vicious, aggressive dog who literally was trained to kill, you're going to react to that bite or that attempt at a bite very differently than if you have a dog that has been abused and it fears your closeness because of its abuse. Both dogs are potentially going to bite you, but how you're responding to the dogs is different based on what you know to be or believe to be the origin of that dog's activities, right? Mm-hmm. So if I know that I can look at two of the same things and respond very differently based on my own calculus, how can I recalibrate my calculus so that there is the possibility of me treating both dogs the same way? All right. So if I do that, then the math I would do about MAGA would be more about fear than it is about hate. So the questions then become different for me. What America are you afraid of? What is it about my presence, their presence, that decision, that policy, that openness that scares you? What are you afraid of? Because if he represents protection, then the calculus is very different than if he represents my very same values. Because if he represents my very same values and the decisions that he's making are doing all of these things that you perceive as hate, then he's the dog that has been trained to kill. But if he represents protection, because I'm afraid of something that I have either been taught to be afraid of or have experienced fear, then you see him as your security. And now, in order to be able to remove that, you have to feel safe enough to not need that. So what can I do in my relationship with you to create enough safety that you don't think you need that as your security guard? It changes the humanity in the calculus.
And then that takes us back to why it is so critical that we remain civil.
Correct.
Towards one another.
That
because
is
we will
exactly.
never be able to communicate and understand one another if we can't be civil enough to even sit in the same room.
Because
with
if
some
I
people.
can't even see you as me because we have different perspectives, civility leaves the room. My job as an emotionally mature individual is to never let that civility leave the room, which means I can never stop seeing you as me.
So we have some calls, but I want to get this last question in first. What do we say then to our children when they're hearing our leaders drop the F-bomb, do say things that are over the top? They're listening, they're watching us, they're watching our reactions, they're listening to what they're hearing. How do we balance that out? And especially, I'm really curious from your perspective, Allison, because you have young children, first of all, or
Don't
teenagers.
tell her about it.
And
Stella can still get her groove back after soccer practice, okay? Just for the love of my life, who's listening?
Oh my goodness!
And I have a youth program, and it is
Yes.
very. That's why I look forward to moments like this, and I really pull on the people who I consider wisdom and mentors and things for me, so that I can say, "Well, I'm supposed to tell these kids." And so a lot of I say, "Well, how did that make you feel?" And they're like, "Miss Allison, did you hear the president was cussing?" And I said, do you think that's good as a leader? Do you think leaders should curse? Do you think that there are other ways? So right now, in the temporary, I don't have a bigger long term, and I've been doing this program under a year, right? Mm-hmm. But the immediate, my knee jerk is me trying to help them to come to the conclusion for themselves that could have been handled differently, at least in the micro, right? Because we're not talking about policy with the kids, but they are very much so like, Miss Allison, I heard the president say it. And so again, it's just this, well, how do you, when you're frustrated with somebody, how do you talk? Do you know how to talk to them in a way in which is not using profanity, or it's not in a way in which is threatening people? And then I'll probably take that and turn, my kids say, I'll give a Martin Luther King Jr. speech, and they'll be like, there go Miss Allison, her TED talk. But and then I come here and I'm trying to figure out, like, what are higher level ways to help them?
But I like that idea of you saying, how do you deal with this on your level? Right. Because again, that's keeping civility in our community.
And how would you deal with it?
Yes.
Which goes back to, thinking before you speak. My mama used to say, just because they did it don't mean you do it.
Right.
And that's the bottom line. If you know it's not right, then you're just not supposed to do it. So.
Let's talk to Mark in Norfolk. Hi, Mark. You're on the air.
Hello, good afternoon to everyone.
Hi.
I normally agree with Dr. Lyons on everything, but I just have a quick. I have a quick question. As you mentioned that the president is supposed to be eloquent, and my question is that where does eloquence align with honesty? And if just to give you a quick snapshot, let's not forget our darling President Reagan, who was involved with the Iran-Contra scandal. And there was a proliferation of mergers, corporate mergers, that really took away the fair competitiveness from small businesses. And then you go to Bush 1 and 2 with their angst against Iran and Saddam Hussein about the weapons of mass destruction. And then comes Bill Clinton with Monica Lewinsky and the crime bill that really sunk the black community. Then you get to Obama, who obliterated Libya, which had zero poverty. Everybody went to school who wanted to go to school. If there was a discipline of school that wasn't in Libya, they would have forced them to go out of the country. And he wanted to basically use the gold standard to get the African nations not to pimp away their oil with a fake currency. So something can sound nice, it can sound intelligent, but if the actions are the same, what's the net yield?
Yeah.
Okay, Mark, let's let the group get back to you. Thanks so much for the call. Since he spoke to you, Allison, Albion.
No, and I really appreciate that, Mark. And don't worry, after I'm finished talking, you'll agree with me again. So what I will say is this, is that what you so eloquently yourself illustrated is that, for the most part, we haven't had a single perfectly honest leader. But the thing about honesty from a leadership perspective is that there is only, if you've ever run a company, if you've if you are the father of a household, you know that there is information that you have when you communicate with your family members, particularly your children, that may not include the whole story. And part of the reason it doesn't include the whole story is because you recognize that if I told you everything that your mother and I were really saying to each other, you could not handle that. And I owe it to her to maintain a level of confidentiality. So leadership as a whole has a level of dynamic complexity that can allow for the nuances that someone could be good and have to make less than great decisions because they have to hold certain elements of information. Also, many of us who have ever been in a leadership position have had to make decisions without all of the information. And that then means that we make the best decision we can with the information we have. And the new information may make our previous decision look absolutely awful. But we didn't have that information when we made the decision. So I say all of those things merely to say that as a human, we have to give some measure of grace to the fact that as long as we are not sitting in the role of the person we're evaluating, we have limited information in knowing what he, she, or they knew when they made the decision they made, which means that there is the possibility that they could be a liar, or there is also the possibility that they are just being a leader, doing the best they can with what they have. So I just give room for both of those things and hope that we choose leaders that have enough character that when they have to make a decision, even one that we wouldn't agree with, that it was close as possible to the character and principle and morality that we hope that a leader would use when they have limited knowledge and information.
And when they find out additional information that they are able to come forward with, that they do that.
If they're able.
Right.
That's exactly right.
And that's my point, if they're able to.
And so I think that was a beautiful way to, like, it just helped me, right? Therein lies the answer or the difference between honesty and eloquency. Because regardless of whether I have all of the information or you have all of the information or what have you or not, you can still watch your mouth when you're reporting on what you're doing. The two are not synonymous. You know what?
And they're not mutually
We have missed you, girl.
either.
Thank you for
Let's see if we can get Pat in real quick from Virginia Beach. Hi, Pat. You're on the air.
Hi.
Quickly, because we're running out of time.
Got it. So I forget her name. She asked the question, what are you afraid of?
Alvian.
Yes, Alvian. Thank you. So my response would be, because we know history repeats itself, and those who have studied history know that some would be afraid that what was done to others will be done to them. And the other thing I would say, too, is dehumanization. When you dehumanize a group of people, then it's okay, or at least you would believe in your head that it's okay to demolish or destroy and just be destructive. So that's my comment. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you so much for the call, Pat. We appreciate that. Dawn, you want to respond? What else can you say?
What can you say to that?
She's right.
She's right.
It's literally
in my
how
opinion.
slavery was possible in America. That as long as we were cattle, it was okay to do what you do to us. And that is true across the board. For as long as women are perceived as less than, it is all right to be able to beat your wife. Just keep it quiet because the legal system can't protect her. You know, we can look at the full story that brings us to this day in the United States. And it is not a pretty one. It's complex. It's complicated. But it doesn't change the fact that we still live in the best country in the world. We just have a lot of work to do to make it live up to its promises.
And remember, we're only 250 years old.
We're babies.
We're
babies compared to the others.
Compared to the others. All right, very quickly then, how do we maintain hope through all of this?
Come to one of my comedy shows. I'm going to make you laugh.
There you go.
Look, we can't fix all the problems.
Don't
but I'm gonna make
underestimate
you laugh.
laughter.
Right. And gratitude. Gratitude for me especially has been something that has helped me to continue to hope. And I put myself around people who are moving forward and growing. And so I'm like, okay, I got another day, another week. We're going to be all right. I can get older. I'm going to grow.
That's Allison Moore. She is a clean comedian.
Cleanish.
Oh, cleanish now.
I mean, you know.
Oh, we got the cleanish.
Cleanish. I might say I might say boots.
She's also a
I'm
human
clean.
resources
Clean,
expert
clean.
and
She is
a young person's leader. Thank you so much, Allison, as
Thank you.
always.
Love
for being
y'all.
here.
What's the
Dawn,
question?
how do we stay hopeful? How do we stay hopeful?
Oh, living in joy. You know, no matter what's going on around you in the world, keep your joy inside and share it with the people that you are able to touch, that are able to hear us have these conversations. You take the conversations and share it with someone else and keep the conversation going. The more we talk to one another, the more we begin to just, it's okay. Life is hard, but that's the way it's always, not always been for everybody, but for the majority of us. You just keep going.
You know,
keep your peace.
Isn't it at some point now, does it feel like it's different than it was in the past?
For me, no.
Okay.
Only probably because of how I have grown. You know, everybody gets to where they are based on their experiences. So my 70 years of living have gotten me through some bad times as an individual, as a leader. And so, you know, I say no stress, keep your joy, and share it.
And keep your peace.
Yes.
And Dawn's name tag says she's management. She is the treasurer for the city of Norfolk. Thank you, Dawn, as always, so much for joining us. Alvin, you get the last minute and a half.
Oh, I have a minute and a half? Oh, this is good. Okay. So I will say this. So it will sound slightly morbid, but you will understand what I mean when I finish my sentences. So some of you know part of the reason I was gone for quite some time was because my mom passed away. And I was there to watch my mom take her last breath. And I will tell you that it is transformative if you ever have the experience. I wish it on no one, but we will all come to that space with someone that we love, right? And so what I know now as a byproduct of that, which is actually the title of a book that I'm writing that's just called The Last Breath Clarity, is that when you take that last breath, there are so many things that are not going to matter anymore. And there are so many things that should have mattered that you didn't allow to be priorities inside of your life, and there are no more breaths to take. What you are going to care about in your last breath should guide how you use the breaths you have today. And those breaths should guide what you want people to say at your funeral. We as a human race need to live with the end in mind, so that people don't have to lie at our funeral. Let us live our lives today with an integrity, a kindness, a humanity, a wholeness, a connectivity that makes it clear that we understand that this is temporary and there is something eternal we will answer for.
Dr. Alvian Lyons, the CEO of Alvian Lyons Incorporated. And audience, we thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that you've enjoyed this edition of Another View. Now you can find this show and all of our programs at WHRO.org or whatever platform you use for your podcast listening pleasure. And if you have a show idea you'd like us to consider, drop us a note at contact@anotherviewradio.org. We'd love to hear from you. Our theme music is an original composition created especially for Another View by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Jordan Christie is our audio engineer, and Dr. Barry Graham answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Have a fantastic weekend, everyone, and let's get together again next Thursday at noon for Another View.
Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, carrying out your charitable wishes forever, whether it's helping shelter animals, feeding the homeless, enhancing the arts, or supporting students. Learn more at leaveabequest.org.